Oh my goodness, y'all.
How are you guys doing today?
I'm great. How are y'all doing?
Doing awesome.
Well.
Yeah.
I can't believe I'm sitting here with 3 former BitCamp students. Let me be perfectly honest. I came into the chat and I was like, where's Shreya? Where's Shreya? Where's Daniel? And they're like, Chloe, we're running the show today. And I was like, wow, the teachers or the students have become the teacher. We have 3 former students here from BitCamp hosting, teaching this session. Y'all, I'm so proud. I'm like, I believe the children are our future. Y'all should introduce yourselves. Emily, we can start with you at the top. Who are we? What are we doing here? How did we get here?
So we actually have some slides for that. So, add some visuals.
Amazing.
But so before we start talking about ourselves, this is the intro to serverless live stream, if you guys didn't know. And Julia, Evelyn, and I were all previously students back in the second cohort. So that was a great experience. And obviously we came back and now we're hosting the third one.
And that wasn't that long ago, y'all. That was still during the Panera. And I remember when the 3 of you started this program, what was your experience with programming? Were you pretty new to it? Because you are now all teaching this whole session. You are new to Azure Functions, I imagine.
Definitely new to Azure Functions. What about you guys?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I was pretty new.
You're the experts. You all made the curriculum. You taught the curriculum. I'm a proud mama here. I'm looking up at my children.
I had little experience with APIs too. I didn't know what it stood for.
And now look at you all now doing incredible things, helping the future Azure Functions professionals of the world build their apps. And I'm so excited, y'all, because we've all seen the projects. We of course did a rehearsal, but the projects today are really, really awesome, and I'm really excited to share them with the world.
All right. Well, like Chloe said, so you're first, Chloe. So I'm gonna give a quick intro to Chloe first because I met her back in the second cohort, and when I first met her, she was like Natalie, the previous serverless mentor, was like, yeah, she's the lady with the orange hair. I was like, okay.
This is the older pick here.
I was like, oh yeah. And then Chloe is just really awesome. She gave us a bunch of talks about public speaking, which helped me with my presentation. And she helped everyone give feedback for their own serverless live streams. And this cohort, she did it again, which was great. And I'm sure the students also found her feedback very impactful and helpful the second time around. So Chloe, do you want to talk a little bit about yourself?
Well, thank you so much for the intro. Yeah, so this is now my 3rd BitCamp that I've worked on. I was in the OG BitCamp a whole, what was that, a year ago or something. But it's been really, really awesome to see. I work with Azure Functions a lot. I build a lot of really fun projects at work, like fake boyfriend app. I build Azure Functions turn-up timers. I love to do creative, fun things with Azure Functions. So when Daniel came to me and was like, hey, do you want to do this with students? I was like, yes, please. I can imagine all of the fun, quirky, exciting, interesting projects that students could make with these. So yeah, I work at Microsoft as a senior cloud advocate. I work on the academic team for cloud advocacy. So I get to work with all the future coders of America, and I can confidently say that I feel good about the future because I'm working with all of the students, be it in Bit Project, be it at universities, who are building awesome, amazing projects that are changing the world in many different ways. This cohort's no exception, of course. But yeah, it's been really fun. We've done, this cohort was really fun too, because once I got to do lectures with these 3 lovely humans here to teach the current cohort. But then also on Mondays, myself and Lorena and Adrian from Courier were having a bunch of fun building this serverless project with Bit Project using Twitch. It was very meta. We were like, on Twitch, live coding how to do Twitch notifications. It was a whole thing. But it's been such a joy to work with this cohort, teaching the soft skills, teaching the Azure Functions skills, and getting them ready for today. So thank you again for having me, Bit Project. So excited to be here.
Awesome. Thank you, Chloe, for your introduction. And yeah, thank you so much for helping us out for like 3 cohorts.
My pleasure.
Me, this is a picture of me, obviously, but I'm a junior at Panther Creek High School. And last cohort, I built Bunny Image, which was like kind of like a file sharing. It's kind of like AirDrop, except it can be used in a browser. So it eliminates the need of having 2 Apple devices. I'm the president of a cybersecurity club at my school. We do like capture the flag competitions, which is really fun. And yeah, that's me. And I was a previous member of the 2nd cohort of Intro to Serverless.
An alumni and a professor.
Hey everyone, my name is Evelyn. I'm a college freshman attending Pasadena City College, majoring in computer science and physics. And I was also part of the Bitcamp Serverless Fall 2020 cohort, the 2nd cohort. And so my project was Flux, which basically sent texts to tell you about the local power grid demand and to tell you exactly when was the best time to turn your lights on and off. Yeah, I'm really excited to be here today.
Hi, I'm Julia. I'm a sophomore in high school, and I was also part of the fall cohort. My project was a weather-based activity recommender. You entered your zip code, and it would give you recommendations for tomorrow. It's really awesome to be here with everyone.
Yeah, thank you. I'd say thank you to 2 of my co-workers or like co-mentors, Julia and Evelyn. Both of you guys have helped me out a lot, and I'm really happy that I got to work with you guys. So
Yeah, me too.
So let's talk a little bit about the curriculum, because Julia and Evelyn and I worked on it after Bo and Natalie built it for the 2nd cohort. So Evelyn or Julia, do you have any like comments about what we changed, what we added?
Not really. I mean, basically what we did is we just took comments from what everybody said in the last few cohorts, and we just kind of we added a little bit. Maybe we has spent more time on, everyone spends more time on the projects now instead of in the GitHub Learning Lab. But it's pretty much similar to the first original curriculum.
Yeah, pretty much we decided to give people a little more time to finish their final projects, because that's kind of like that's what we're doing right now, and it's awesome to see how everyone's been able to finish theirs up this cohort.
Yeah, it was mostly like Bo and Natalie did a great job. We were just, touching up stuff, adding small details, that adding links that would help students understand what was going on.
So I have to ask, now that you are all the teachers and you had to go through this again and watch everybody learn this from the beginning, what was it like to go through this again? Do you feel like you're the experts on this now? Did you have a lot of deja vu seeing them struggle at certain points?
I think one specific error really brought me back. Was Anita's error, and it was something I actually hadn't seen before, and that just really reminded me that so many things can go wrong,
right,
for no reason.
Yeah, I remember when I attended my boot camp, a lot of the teachers a lot of the students would become TAs, and they could just see the desperation on our faces when we would run into a bug that we wouldn't know, because for a lot of us, it was our first bugs we were running into, and they're like, it's okay, just take a deep breath. So you kind of turn into therapists a little bit too, I think, especially when you're teaching beginner concepts. Well, I'm so proud of all of you. I think y'all are even smarter engineers than I am at this point.
That's a bit of a stretch for me.
Same here.
But yeah, let's so this was basically just a quick overview of what happened. We had a learning lab, we had a cool mentorship where students got to work with mentors, which we're going to talk about soon. And next, this was a 3rd cohort, and in the 4th cohort, we're going to have more student-to-student instructors, which is going to be really exciting. So last cohort, we had Bo and Natalie. This cohort, it was me, Julia, and Evelyn. And then next cohort is going to be even more new instructors. So that's going to be exciting. So mentors. So Julia or Evelyn, did any of you who had Anthony?
I did. I had Anthony. He's awesome. I remember last presentation, I was basically like, Anthony basically just built my project for me. But he talked through my ideas with me, and he helped me, because climate change is a very big problem. So it's very difficult to kind of pinpoint a specific area you want to tackle, and he helped me a lot through that process. And yeah, he was just an awesome resource. So
yeah. From other students, I've also heard that Anthony is awesome. So
Anthony is an awesome coworker too. I gotta say, this is an Anthony Stan show now. We love Anthony.
So we had Stephanus this time, and I personally did not have him. Julia, you had him, right?
Yeah, he was really awesome because I was pretty new to coding in general. Actually, when I joined the serverless Bitcamp, but he really helped me get through everything and like learn about how to connect the Azure function to your front end and just processing all the data.
Yeah, that's awesome. And next up, we have Ankit. I had Ankit for my second cohort, and he was a great mentor in terms of introducing to me what like code in the industry is like, because previously I had just did like coding in school, and it's very concrete. I mean, it's not concrete, but it's basically just make your code work. There's no other consideration. So he really introduced me to how people actually develop software, how everything works, and that was just a really great introduction and super helpful.
And I think that's so important when you're learning how to code is like, okay, I know code, but like, how is this practical? So connecting those things is important.
Like determining all the prime numbers in a set, like that, I can't see any practicality in that.
FizzBuzz, who's that? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Sounds like a Beanie Baby to me.
And we also had Marie. She was new this time, so I don't really so Julia and Evelyn and I didn't have her, but I bet she was amazing and definitely helped the students a lot. So Marie was she was a new to this iteration. Okay, without further ado, we have our projects coming up. So let's bring in the first student.
Ta-da! Hello, Anita!
Hi.
Anita, I'm so excited. I, of course, have seen a sneak peek of your project, but I'm just curious, what has been your previous coding experience before BitCamp?
Yeah, so I'm actually a junior studying computer science at the University of Illinois at Chicago right now, so I had a little bit of experience from that, but I had never used Azure or APIs up until now, so I definitely had some room to learn.
Very exciting. Oh, I'm so excited for you to share your project with us today.
Yeah, so now we're going to leave the stage to Anita so that she can start, and we're also going to post her blog in the chat in case any of you want to see how she built her project, and if you want to replicate it step by step, that's totally free for you to do. So Anita, whenever you're ready, go ahead and start.
Sure. So today I'll be introducing my restaurant recommendation app called Dine the Distance. So as I mentioned before, I'm Anita. I'm currently a junior studying CS at UIC. And the reason why I joined BitCamp was to learn more about Microsoft Azure, since I had never really used cloud computing platforms before, and also to just have a good experience for a side project. So my inspiration from this project, Dine the Distance, mostly came from the fact that I'm a huge foodie and I'm always down to try new things. One of the things I missed the most about going to in-person classes in downtown Chicago was the fact that it gave me an excuse to try all sorts of restaurants around the loop. If anyone ever makes the trip down to Chicago sometime soon, hopefully if things start opening up, I highly recommend Bright Walk Kitchen. That's probably my favorite restaurant. It's in the top right corner of this slide. Their stir-fry bowls are pretty unreal, but yeah, that's where my inspiration kind of came from. So in terms of like the problem I wanted to solve that relates to food, picking a restaurant has always been like a huge struggle of mine, especially when I'm choosing between friends. I know sometimes when you look up restaurants on Google, it can be overwhelming just because there's so many options to choose from, and it's hard to sift through to find what restaurant maybe you haven't tried before that's not too far away, that's in your budget. But two things that I always consider when I'm choosing a restaurant is first, convenience and how far I'm willing to drive or walk or take the train, so on. And the second is cuisine and what kind of food I'm craving, which usually isn't ever the same type of food, since I'm a very indecisive person. But in terms of my vision for the application, kind of where I wanted this to go, I wanted the user to be able to enter in 2 locations, probably yours and a friend, and in turn recommend restaurants at a neutral midpoint location, and with the restaurant data include the website with a menu, the address of the restaurant, and the phone number, and basically just a way to narrow down your choices so that it can be easier to pick where to go. So for my progress, this was the flowchart that I sent for my project proposal that kind of shows how Dine the Distance works at a high level. So basically, as you can see, there is a web page, and in that web page, I wanted the user to enter in 2 zip codes, 2 phone numbers, and a cuisine of food that they want to try. And from there, the Azure function will get a central latitude and longitude location and communicate with Azure Maps to get restaurant recommendations that are within like a respectable radius of the midpoint between the 2 locations. And from there, the users can see these restaurants and pick a restaurant. And that's the part where Twilio kind of comes into play. Once they pick a restaurant, we communicate back with the Azure function, and Twilio will send them a message, a text message saying where this restaurant is located so that they can easily make the trip. So next, in terms of my process and how I went about like creating this project, I divided it into 3 main steps over the past couple of weeks. So for front-end development, I created my form for the user to enter their location, parse the JSON results from Azure Maps, and just make the whole application look a little bit prettier. And for my backend function app, I created the function app, and I ended up needing to create 2 HTTP triggers. My first trigger calculated the midpoint between 2 locations and requested restaurant information. And the second trigger texts the restaurant address to the 2 users once they select one they want to go to. And then my final step was deploying the static web app and using it to go try new food. So that was kind of like a high-level overview. Now I'll go more into detail about like what each step kind of looked like. So starting with front end, as I mentioned before, I created a form for user location input. And this is what my form looks like after removing like some gross styling. But basically there are 6 main elements that I'd say were pretty crucial to this form. So 2 of them were the 2 user zip codes of where they're located, and then 2 user phone numbers so that we can text them the restaurant information, the cuisine that they decided on, and then a submit button to send all this information to backend and deal with it later. So the next part that we needed to do was kind of parse the JSON results and send our form data to our trigger. So here what I'm basically doing is using a post request to send the 2 zip codes and the cuisine of food that the user has chosen. And I'm sending this over to a route to my dine trigger function, which I'll talk more about later. The dine trigger function is my HTTP function that basically will find the midpoint for the restaurant and get the data. So after making this request, we wait for the restaurant data to come back and then parse it and use this object to populate the results on the page in a way that's not so gross looking like JSON, but something that the user can see and use. And then for backend, as I mentioned before, the first thing I set up was my dine trigger, which was my first HTTP trigger function. So before kind of going into any of that, I needed to install some node package dependencies to use throughout my project for backend. The first one was node fetch, which I used to make HTTP requests. The second was US zips, which I used to convert user zip code inputs into latitude and longitude coordinates, since that's what Azure Maps kind of wanted. And then geolib, which I used to find the midpoint between 2 coordinate locations. So the next step was using these node packages to find the midpoint location. So I know this is sort of a lot of code, but for my dyn trigger function, basically what I did was first take the request body that was sent in from the form that we made a post request for earlier, and then use US zips to convert each zip code location into different latitude and longitude coordinates, and use these as well as geolib to get the center coordinate that we can use and send to our Azure Maps API. So the next step after getting the center location was to send this location to a function called analyze coordinates. And in analyze coordinates, we're basically going to be using this data to request restaurant information, and it's the next step I'll be explaining as well. So finally, we're going to be requesting restaurant data using Azure Maps. So here, as I mentioned before, I'm basically using the analyze coords function where I have the central latitude, the central longitude, and then the cuisine that the user has specified. And I'm basically just populating the URL search parameters with this data as well as the subscription key so that it authenticates, and then performing a GET request to get my JSON restaurant data that we've requested for that location. So now that we've found the restaurants, we next want to text the restaurant information to the user so that they can actually go there. So that's where setting up my message trigger kind of came into play, and that's my second HTTP trigger as well. So in order to send text messages, I needed to work with Twilio. So this kind of involved first creating a Twilio account and a phone number that I can use, and second, adding Twilio bindings to my message trigger function.json. This is kind of what my binding ended up looking like. So what I added was my account SID from my Twilio account, as well as my authentication token, and then my Twilio phone number. One thing I have to note for this step was since I did end up sending out 2 text messages, I ended up needing to create 2 Twilio bindings. I named the first one message and the second one message 2. And then lastly, now that we've set up Twilio and we're good to go there, this is basically the step where I, again, similar to my dyn trigger function, grab the request body, I grab the phone numbers of the 2 users, as well as the address of the restaurant and the restaurant name that they've selected, and populate their text with a text message to the 2 phone numbers. And the text message is just basically a standard script where I wrote, thanks for using dyn the distance, here's the address to X restaurant name, and then I put in the address there as well. So in terms of my solution, I can now go into my demo video. So this is basically just the landing page for my demo. It says here, enter 2 zip codes and we'll recommend restaurants where you can meet friends halfway. And then we're going to go ahead and get started to view the form data where the user can start entering their information. So here's basically where you can see the form with 2 zip codes, 2 phone numbers, and then a food cuisine, and then a find food option to kind of send your results over. In this form, I use the zip code for the Sears Tower in downtown Chicago, and then another zip code for the St. Louis Arc, I believe in Missouri. Oh, it's theirs. And then finally adding a food cuisine that the 2 users have agreed upon. In this case, it was Italian food, and then clicking find food. And then as you can see, the restaurant information populates below. In each restaurant, like blob, you can see that there's a link to the restaurant's website if it's there, and then a phone number as well as an address to get there. And for each restaurant, the user has the option to click the send directions button, which will basically text the restaurant directions and the restaurant name to the phone numbers that we specified earlier in the form. And then I'm just going to try it again with Mexican food. So you can see like how the page refreshes. So basically, as you can see, the Italian food went away and now we have Mexican food options. And yeah, that pretty much wraps up the demo. But the one thing that wasn't shown in the demo. If we can go to the next slide. Okay, yeah, here we go. So the one thing that wasn't shown was basically the text message that was sent to the users where it says, thanks for using Dine the Distance, and then it'll show the restaurant name as well as the restaurant address that they selected. And then moving on to the challenges, initially I was a bit unsure what map API to use to get all of my data. I was first a little bit insistent on using the Bing API, but upon looking at the documentation with my mentor, we realized that there was some sort of migration going on with the Bing API, and we settled on using Azure Maps, which ended up working out pretty well. Next, another challenge I faced was passing the form data from the front end to the back end. And this was a little bit of a challenge for me just because I was having a hard time visualizing what variables were updating at what point in time. And setting up a debugger in VS Code and setting breakpoints made this a lot easier to kind of deal with. And the last challenge I faced was setting up Twilio just because I hadn't ever done that before and looking at the documentation to fill in our function.json bindings. So in terms of future plans and what I want to add, one thing would probably be adding texting the driving directions from a precise location like your home address. Right now, all of my form elements are a little bit general, like adding a zip code can span a great amount of area, which is not so specific as to adding like a home address. So that could be something that the user finds more useful. And then the next plan could be adding a estimated driving distance to each restaurant if the users are concerned about mileage and how far that they're going to have to end up driving. So for my experience and what I learned, I definitely learned a lot in this BitCamp. The first being the basics of serverless architecture. The next is navigating the Microsoft Azure portal, making HTTP requests, configuring a debugger for VS Code, and finally running a web app locally for testing with the debugger. I'd like to thank my mentor, Marie, for answering all my questions and making this project a great learning experience, as well as Emily, Evelyn, and Julia for laying out clear expectations throughout the BitCamp, and thanks for everyone for listening.
Yay! Great work, Anita.
How dare you make me so hungry with that image in your slide. I want to eat all the snacks, and I want to use your app to find the tastiest snacks.
Me too. Me too.
Thank you.
Amazing. Well, tell us a little bit about, so you mentioned you kind of had to change your course. You were going to use Bing Maps, then use Azure Maps. What was that process like? Because I know for me, when I was building my first project, I had to like change course a bunch of times and it kind of like threw me off. But it sounds like you, with the help of your mentor, you're able to kind of pretty easily switch over to that.
Yeah, so actually before this project, I didn't really have much experience using APIs and like reading API documentation. So that was kind of a struggle.
Huh?
Yeah, that was a struggle in itself. And I found that with the Bing API, like I was trying to look at all the parameters that I could have added. I just wasn't making progress. And I wasn't sure if it was like a me problem. But then upon like kind of exploring it a bit more, we noticed that the whole API was just undergoing construction and it was something I just needed to change my focus on.
If it makes you feel any better, for anybody out there struggling with APIs, the first API I ever dealt with was the Twitter API back in 2016, and it's taken me till 2020 to touch it again. Like I was like, me and the Twitter API, we had a fight. We just stay apart for a little bit, but learning APIs takes time, and I'm so glad you're able to learn that during the program.
Well, we have some audience questions, actually.
Yes.
That's awesome. So the first one, let's show it. So what about adding a feature for the system to track your location or to find you automatically? Anita, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that could definitely be convenient, especially like if you're on the move and you're not necessarily at your home address all the time, like just getting your location that way and not having to input into a form would be convenient and something I would consider to add in the future as well.
Awesome. And I've heard before that the Twilio API can be problematic. So we have a question about that. So, did you have experience with getting locations in previous projects? It seemed complicated.
No, actually I didn't. I was initially, like, when I was trying to find the midpoint location, I was going to see if there was an API that could do that for me, but my mentor kind of steered me in the way of, oh, there's a node package that can do that. So that just ended up being a lot easier to deal with, and kind of like learning along the way. But before this, I hadn't had experience with like maps and dealing with locations, so it was all new.
That's the beauty of mentors, because I remember when I was first dealing with date time, I was like, okay, I'm going to build this from scratch. I'm going to do this. And my mentor was like, actually, there's a package for that you can use.
There's
Okay.
the NPM package for anything.
They're so convenient.
I know, right? And I just want to talk about your UI.
Yes.
Like, it was so nice, right, Chloe?
Yes, beautiful UI. I remember when I first saw this presentation, I was like, this is gorgeous. I want to use this app yesterday. So when I'm coming to Chicago, you're hooking me up. We're gonna taste all the different tasty treats and just stare at your beautiful UI.
For sure.
Well, yeah, let's see if there's any more questions here. But Anita, your project was so great. It made me hungry. And I definitely want to use it because me and my friends always have trouble finding a place to eat. So we always end up going to the same place. But yeah, Chloe, do you have any last comments?
I'm just so proud. I just love when I see people learning this, like APIs and things for the first time, because if you're able to do this right now with your very beginner skills, Anita, I'm like, you're going to change the world with code. So I'm just so happy. Ooh, we have a question here. What framework did you use from the front end?
Oh, I ended up just using like HTML, CSS, JS, and Bootstrap for the front end. I don't have too much experience with front end frameworks, but I'd like to learn. So
yeah, your next step.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Anita. This is such a great project.
Thank you.
Yeah, and now, thank you, Anita. We're going to transition into something completely different. Well, it's not that different. It's still about Azure, but we have a new project, and let me remove this. So let me
I'm
introduce
excited.
Jeff had made a project called the SMS Earthquake Alert, and I'm not going to talk too much about it, but it's really great. The backstory behind it is awesome.
Yeah, and I live in California, so I feel like this could be very practical for me as well.
Yeah, we'll let Jeff take it away. So go ahead.
All right. So I'm going to briefly just go through my web app I made for the Serverless Bitcamp, SMS Earthquake Alert. A little bit about myself. I'm a non-traditional student at Oklahoma State University, seemingly a lifelong student these days. I previously earned my master's and bachelor's degree in geology from OSU, and then worked as a geologist for like the last 10 years. Got caught up in my first layoff, bit of a career dead end, so I decided to make a career pivot to software engineering. So last fall, I re-enrolled at OSU to finish out a bachelor's in computer science. So coming into my project, I knew I kind of wanted to blend my past background as a geologist with my project. So that's what I did. So in 2011, I guess it was November 2011, something pretty wild happened for Oklahoma. We had a record-setting 5.6 magnitude earthquake go off around, I think it was like 7 o'clock at night or something, just freaking everybody out basically in the whole state. Because earthquakes happen here, but before then, they weren't frequent. We'd get maybe 3 or 4 a year, and usually small enough where you wouldn't feel them. But I have a frequency chart, a bar chart up here you can see. So you can see in November 2011, we had over 50 earthquakes. And mind you, these are earthquakes that are over a magnitude of a 3.0, which is about the threshold where you kind of start to feel them. So we had 50 earthquakes go off after that big one, and a little period of quiescence. But you can see in May of or summertime 2015, we had over 104 earthquakes happen in Oklahoma above a 3, which is just insane. And this time period made Oklahoma one of the most seismically, actually the most seismically active place in the United States, which is just insane. The reasons why is a whole nother lecture, but regulations were put into place, and you can see that they fell off in frequency. while they're less frequent, they still often happen. And as a geologist, I'm always curious like how big these things are when I feel them. So I go to the USGS website to look up how big these earthquakes are, and I was frequently doing that, and found myself just, there's got to be a better way for this. And not only just as a geologist being curious about how big they are, you can see here in the bottom right corner a picture I took in my house of a windowsill, of a nice crack coming off this window, one of many. I'm here to tell you this is the true joy of home ownership, being hyper aware of every flaw in your house. But yeah, just all these cracks in my house, when a big one happens, I'm always just kind of curious. And so moving in to deciding and designing my web app, SMS Earthquake Alert, I knew right off the bat that the USGS had an API that provided real-time earthquake data. And so I knew I was going to use that out the gate. I'm pretty inexperienced at front-end stuff, and actually just coding in general. Like I said, I'm kind of in a career pivot right now. I use Python scripts every now and then as a geologist, but nothing too intense. And so I kind of started my project by just writing out some pseudocode of how I wanted the logic to work. And then with great help from my mentor, Anthony Chu, dug me out of many holes. I would come up with like 15 lines of code, and he would come back with like 3 lines that would do it way more efficiently than the routes I was going down. And then the first step I took was kind of sticking to what I did know a little bit. If you're of an age, you're probably familiar with websites called like AngelFire or GeoCities. This is the like pre-MySpace, pre-Facebook. You had free web hosting and you had to learn HTML. So I kind of did that when I was a kid. So it's been pretty wild coming back into this years later and just seeing how the technology's evolved. Like back then, CSS didn't even exist. And so with the help of Anthony, I told him what I wanted to do, and we got together and we kind of made a flow chart here of the processes that needed to happen to make this thing function right. At the meat of it, I have 2 Azure Functions. I have an HTTP trigger and a timer. And basically, I have a static web page that's hosting a form that lets users access the website, type in their phone number, and then a magnitude of earthquakes and the location of where they want to be notified. And then that form pushes the data to the HTTP trigger, which stores it in Cosmos DB. And then my timer loops through all of my users in Cosmos DB and checks the earthquake criteria back against the USGS API and sends out a text, depending on if they've been notified about that particular earthquake or not. So here's just a brief look at my actual web app here. Here's my static site on the left. I have basically just a little bit eye candy, pulling just earthquakes that happened in the past hour, day, and week to display on the page. But the main function here, obviously, is to get the phone number and the minimum magnitude, a radius in miles, and a lat long of the location. And that pushes it off to an HTTP trigger, which in turn, here's the HTTP timer that will work through. And basically, the meat here, it pulls a contact from Cosmos DB, formats a string with their requirements or the criteria of the earthquakes they want to be notified about, does a fetch request from the USGS API, gets a list of earthquakes, and then rolls through and checks the earthquake IDs that the USGS assigns. And if they haven't been notified about it, then they're notified about it. And I'm going to try to play my short demo video. I'm not quite sure if I need to be doing that or one of you guys, but I'm going to try here. Hopefully you guys can see the video. So here's rolling into the HTTP trigger. Here's my site. I'm just typing in some arbitrary phone number right now, a minimum magnitude, and there's the mile radius and just some random lat long. Submit, you can see the HTTP triggered right there. It pushes the data into Cosmos DB. Here's my Cosmos DB going in, and you can see that that data has been added to the database. And the next up is going to be the HTTP timer. Here I'm just in VS Code. I'm going to execute the function. It's going to roll through, and then since I'm really the only active user in the database, it's going to send me a text message about earthquakes that have happened in Oklahoma. And here you can see a list. I think I did this around 4 o'clock. You can see before 4 o'clock that day, I already had a handful of earthquakes that went off here. All right, back to
All right. I think Jeff accidentally left the stream, but we're going to talk a little bit about his project before
I was literally just drafting a tweet that says, "This project rocks," as in like geology pun. I love this. I literally just saw someone, I was tweeting about like, "Hey, look, Jeff's back." I was just
I'm back.
praising you. Someone said, "What a story about you making this transition from geologist to adding more code to your life." So I was just singing your praises on the Twitter here.
Been a wild ride for sure.
Puns don't rock. Wow.
I mean, I got plenty under my belt, so I'm not suitable for public streaming, but I'll save this for another time.
You're good.
All right, I flubbed the key. I think I cut myself off, but I'm ready to get started again if you guys are.
Yeah, go ahead and share your screen and let you.
All right. Okay, I think I'm back in business here, maybe. All right, cool. So again, challenges here. Like I said, I'm kind of in the middle of a career pivot, so everything is new to me. I utilize some Python scripting in my job, and coming back, I've been mostly focusing on C++. So I'm very inexperienced in front-end development. Like I said, the GeoCities stuff, that was kind of my experience coming in here. And then just language overload. Like I'm also taking a mobile app development class this semester. So just trying to learn Swift and Kotlin on top of just all the other languages, and then JavaScript on top of it. It's just like so much like syntax, just swimming around in my head, keeping it straight is difficult. And then everybody that's in school knows right now, this is kind of the midterm time. So just finding the time to work on it and make it do the things I want it to do. Future plans, I have a ton of bug fixes I can do. I'm not validating any of the form data. So if instead of a phone number, you could still type in a string and it's going to cause problems. So that kind of needs to be fixed. And also, I was planning on implementing a geocode API. So instead of typing a lat long, you could type a city name and a state, and it would do that lat long conversion for you. So that's a feature I'd like to get in there. And also the USGS includes some tsunami alert data in their API as well. So I could kind of maybe mix it in with a tsunami alert. Experience with the Bit project, like I said, coming back into this, just getting more familiar with JavaScript and HTML, CSS. I've never used APIs before, so that was a first. I had a GitHub account, but I've never used it. So getting more familiar with GitHub, and then just, of course, the Azure Functions and cloud computing itself is totally new. Cosmos DB, Twilio, a handful of VS Code extensions that I've never used before, and then working with data format, because the USGS API pushes the data back in JSON files. And there's also some XML that you gain too. So I got familiar working with both of them on this project. So yeah, just a ton of new stuff, got a lot out of it for sure. I just want to thank the whole Bit project team. Special thanks to my mentor, Anthony Chu, and of course, the serverless instructors, Emily, Evelyn, and Julia. Thanks.
So awesome work with that, Jeff. Here, let me change screens. We have like just so many questions. We have, the chat is blowing up. So
yeah.
Oh man.
This project rocks, literally rocks.
Nice.
But yeah, the first one is about your experience with software as a geologist. So do you have any response to that?
Yeah, so mainly, and I worked in the oil and gas sector. So whenever you drill a well, they send a bunch of tools down the hole and they slowly pull them back up, and you get a bunch of data, like petrophysical properties. And you can either do it in Excel one by one, or you can make a script that will go through and do a bunch of data transformations on data for you. And so that's basically what I did most of my Python coding in, was just doing basic data transformations on that well data.
Awesome. That sounds interesting. I want to talk about Angel Fire and because I have no experience with that.
Oh my
right.
gosh.
So
I'm to
I've
be
been
A
honest.
skiing in
beautiful
Angel
era of
Fire
technology.
for sure. Like, and I love to ski, and I've been to Angel Fire multiple times to ski, but I in no form do I associate Angel Fire with skiing. It's always crappy HTML websites is what comes to mind. but yeah,
Yeah.
it was basically free web hosting.
Mhm.
So imagine
you-
like Weebly. Like imagine like all of these things like Squarespace, Weebly that exist now that can help small businesses look very professional. Now imagine that, but it's the 90s, early 2000s, and we love clip art.
yeah, lots of
I
marquee
remember like
scrolling, lots
seeing
of GIFs spinning around, and every website was under construction. Everybody was obsessed with tracking how many people came to
Oh
their
yeah,
website.
everybody had
Yeah,
counters on their
yeah.
websites that were like 200 people have visited this site. I had
It's the
a
original like button.
I remember I had an O-Town fan club, GeoCities or Angel Fire website, and it was all about the band O-Town. So it would be like the equivalent probably of like if a kid made a BTS website today. And I had like spinning, sparkly things. It's very MySpace era to give you an
Oh,
idea
yeah.
of the aesthetic, but I think we need to bring it back.
we do. We need to
A
bring
GitHub page.
it back.
I think that's my next project, a GitHub Pages site that is an Angel Fire recreation.
We'll just like create a second GeoCities.
Yeah, let's
Because
do
like
it.
it's been phased out. All right. Yeah, that's a good plan. All right. Well, let me see. I feel like there's more comments. Yeah, so a lot of people like how you incorporated geology with your project, which I totally agree. I thought that was super cool.
Yeah,
But yeah,
for sure.
Chloe Divin. Oh, go ahead.
And no, a lot of it was just like you're comfortable sticking to what you know, and I know a lot about that, so I figured transitioning to something new, but might as well try to drag some of my old life in with it, you know. So
Yeah, I think that's how we get more innovation in different fields too,
Yeah,
right? Like,
definitely.
I think one of the first projects I built after my boot camp was a piece of software that could be used by stage managers in the theater. So, like, I see a lot of places in my previous life as an actress where I'm like, oh my gosh, I wish we had better technology for that. And who knows, maybe we're gonna get the next like coded geologist tracksuit. I don't know.
yeah.
We'll workshop it. Ooh, another question. Have you seen any other APIs you wanted to use?
So mainly the other API, that geocoding one that would convert the lat long, because I mean, nobody knows the lat long off the top of their head of the cities they live in. So that was the primary one that would be useful for this project in particular. That was the only really two, like the USGS one and the geocoding was the only two I kind of looked at for this.
Yeah,
And
cool.
something that was really fun about demoing this or testing this was you really need an earthquake to be able to test this, right, Jeff? So
Right,
how were you
yeah.
able to like get this? How was testing for you for this project?
So fortunately, like I said, they've died down here, but they
Okay.
still happen. At least we're still going to get one a day minimum. And I did,
Wow.
like, I had my threshold, because if you live like on a plate boundary or the Ring of Fire, somewhere with a lot of seismic activity, your phone will be ringing off the hook if you don't put a floor function on your magnitude.
Right.
So like here for my demo purposes, I just set my magnitude to 0 and just sat back for it. Like I said, I tested at 4 o'clock and I had 4 earthquakes come in automatically for that day in Oklahoma.
Oh my goodness. Well, it sounds like this will be an app that you continue to use then.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, it saves me time.
Oh my.
That's
I need that
great.
for the Bay Area too. My boyfriend always makes fun of me because I was like, "What was that?" And he's like, "Someone closed a door. It's okay. It's not
Right.
an earthquake."
Yeah, unfortunately, you
I-
can't predict them yet, and if they're big enough, Mother Nature will tell you about it before any person will. But you can always get a notification, let you know how big it was after the fact, right?
That is true.
Honestly, I've only ever experienced one earthquake in my entire life, as long like from what I can remember, because I
That
live.
was my first one. It was that 2011 one, which is pretty wild.
You get excited about it, and then you feel one, and you're like, "I'm good for a while. I think I'm
Right?
good."
Yeah. It's the novelty wears off quick. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Jeff. That was a great, insightful presentation, connecting two fields together. That was great. We're going
Awesome.
to transition to our next project by
Thanks.
Kim, and yeah,
Thanks,
she's
Jeff.
going to be. It's something related to 2020.
Very relevant info here.
Yeah.
Hi, Kim.
Hi, how are you guys?
Doing well. Just getting inspired by all the future CEOs and coders of America. No big deal.
Yeah, a lot of great coders here. Nice meeting everyone.
Well, I'm super excited for this project, and it seems like a very relevant project. We will let you take it away, Kim.
Yeah.
Sounds good. All right. So my project was the face mask detector, and it's a web app. And as you know, we're in a global pandemic right now, and one of the main requirements in public is to wear a face mask, just for safety concerns and just to make sure everyone stays healthy. And before I start, I can just introduce myself a little bit. Um, about me, my name is Kim. I'm a sophomore attending USC, University of Southern California. I'm a computer science major at their School of Engineering. In the past, I've interned for one of NASA's Mars projects. Currently, I'm a researcher at their Space Research Center, both at NASA and USC, and I'm going to be an upcoming intern for the summer as well for NASA and JPL. And one of the things, some of my hobbies I love to do besides just always, constantly doing schoolwork or being busy is to stream. I love to stream. I started streaming like two months ago. I love to play a lot of games with my friends as well. And I love just doing a lot of just like fun random artwork here and there, just some graphic design. But yeah, that's just a little bit about me. Now diving into the project, I'm going to start with the introduction. And I got this idea from obviously it's COVID. So I thought, okay, I wanted to make a project related to how can I help relieve others, right? Like how can I do something that can benefit and relieve the COVID virus. And one of my first ideas was I really want to do a project related to face detection or object detection. I have no experience with that whatsoever, but I just wanted to explore it because it seemed really cool. And so I was like, okay, what can I do that's related to COVID and face detection? And the other day I went outside, crazy. I went out grocery shopping for my family or just going out in general. And I was at Walmart and I saw a few people not wearing their mask. And I was like, yikes, that's not good. And I was like, what can I do just, to prevent that? And so I thought, oh, okay, maybe I can do something where it detects people's faces and just tells them, oh, you're wearing a mask or you're not wearing a mask. So that was the problem, leading into the problem. There's a lot of people, not just in the US, but just in general, not wearing a mask. And it's, there's a lot of people who just don't follow the proper guidelines, and they create a higher risk of spreading this contagious virus. And that's not good because we want everyone to stay safe and healthy. So I thought this would be an important project because, again, wearing a facial mask in public has become a mandatory requirement since the start of COVID. They're important in public spaces such as stadiums, stores, airports, traffic, just anywhere, crowded spaces. And safety regulations is critical just to safeguard everyone's health. And so yeah, that was basically my proposal. So now I'm going to dive into the progress of my project and how I did this. So you can see this flow chart. It looks super complicated. There's a bunch of words, probably just like a bunch of things you guys don't understand, which is totally okay. I'm going to break down this flow chart into something much easier and much more visual. But this was the flow chart I created. I created another one before, but this is like an updated version. But yeah, this is just my flowchart. So to simply translate this flowchart to this flowchart, it looks basically just like this. And I'm going to go through each part of the flowchart and explain each step. So the first part, as you can see, is the website. The website, and it's the front end part. So you guys know what a website is. It's when you go on the internet, you find some website, Google, YouTube, whatever, right? And what I did was I just took a template. And then I modified it with some HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and Bootstrap. And I did that from my local directory. So I just downloaded it, modified it, and then I turned it to a website by uploading it to what Microsoft is called a static web app, which is where you can just make basically your own server, your kind of host, and you just upload your GitHub and all your files, and then it gives you a generated link, and then it goes out into the public. And this was the link that it generated for me, called Gentle Meadow, which is a really cute name that I thought it did for me. But yeah, this is just a front end start, the basic stuff where I just made a website for it. Basically, I just started making a website for it. And then one of the important things on the website, besides the fancy pictures and the navigation bars and all that, the typical website structure, I made two buttons: the upload button and the submit button. So this project is where you're supposed to basically just upload a picture or a video of a person wearing a mask or not. You grab the file, you load up the picture physically. So when you upload it, the picture will appear on the website, and then you just click the submit button. And basically when you click on it, it runs the file, like the image, through a bunch of different functions and libraries, which I'll be talking about next, to detect if there's a mask or not. And it replaces that old image with the new updated image. So that's the front end part. So we basically I just explained a third of it. Basically, you can see on the website part, that's the website part. And then the next step it goes to is it takes the image, the uploaded image that the user inputs, and puts it through the Azure function. But what is an Azure function? So it can take an HTTP request at an endpoint, and just take it where it takes my uploaded image, it submits it, and basically runs it through this face detection code that I created, and analyzes it to detect whether it has a mask or not. And then it sends it back to the website. So the function is just it's like one of the main core parts of my project that is able to have the image just run through and work. So one of the first things, and when you see the code, obviously you might not understand everything, but I just basically took snippets of my code and explained it in a more simple way. So the code, as you can see on the top, the preloader, it just means like, oh, I uploaded it, the image loads, and then you click the submit button, and then boom, the image appears on the website. And I'll show all of this soon, like how it actually, like what I actually did. But I'm just explaining what the project is now. But you basically just upload the image, submit it, and then the image will appear right on the website. And then it makes an HTTP request to the function where it's like, hey, can you run this image and show me is there a mask or not? And so inside the function, I used Python code. I used Python code to run the code for it to detect it. Basically, it's like the core part of the project. And the first thing you do is you import a bunch of libraries. Libraries are just like a bunch of like databases around, and you just import them, you grab them, and then you use them. And I used three main libraries: the Opencv, Python, TensorFlow Keras, and Google Colab. Google Colab is like the fourth one, but I only used it for a little bit, and I'll explain what I mean by that. But basically, I just grabbed three of these libraries and put them in there. And I'll explain what each of these library does in a second. And then I grabbed the mask database file and the face detection algorithm file. So the face detection algorithm file is just like the algorithm where it's like, oh, you're allowed to use it, and then you're allowed to like manipulate it around, and then it's like basically the thing that I need for it to detect the faces. If I don't have that, it doesn't know what a face is, unless I make my own algorithm, which is I'm not at that level to do that kind of coding yet. So it takes that and then the mask database file, and then basically puts it together, and it's like basically a face mask detection. So and then one thing I want to mention is that the algorithm I'm using, I didn't put on the slide, I forgot, but it's called the hard cascade, which is basically the oldest and fastest face algorithm I found, where it's basically just a machine learning object that's detecting objects in an image or video. And it's not the best in accuracy, I'll admit, but it's like one of the easier ones to play around with. But yeah, basically once the face is detected, this face detection algorithm file just runs through, and the mask one, and it just runs through and detects whether there's a face or a mask. So now I'm going to explain what each library does, because as you can see in the flowchart, all the way to the right, there's a bunch of different libraries. There's the Opencv, the TensorFlow, and then the mask and no mask database. And I'll explain what each one of them does. The Opencv is basically Opencv is a real-time computer vision program. Algorithm. It's like a computer vision thing where it just scans an image and it's like, oh, hey, there's like all these pixels and details in the image. We want you to analyze it. So the code on the left basically translates what it's going on the right. So basically what it does is, the first thing it does is scans the image that you uploaded, and then it turns it into a grayscale image, which is basically just like a black and white image. The reason we do that is because it's just easier, I think, for the computer. I'm not full into face detection. Like, I don't know too much about it, but basically for what I understand, it turns into a black and white image because it's easier just to detect 2 colors rather than a million different colors. And then it gets confused. So just turn it into a black and white image. Then you turn that image into an array. And an array is basically just a database, not database, a bunch of numbers and indices, and just turns it into a bunch of numbers basically, just so it can like read and see like, oh, like what's happening inside the image. So, and then once you turn it into an array, we use this thing called TensorFlow, which is the machine learning algorithm. And Keras is like the subset of TensorFlow. It's like one of the libraries for TensorFlow, and it's a deep learning model. And just to give it a little background, Keras is basically a Python library for deep learning models. It basically trains neural networks. I mean, like the reason why the face mask works and stuff, because it runs through a bunch of like mask and database things, and it's like, oh, okay, this is what a person looks like without a mask, and this is what a person looks like with a mask. So it detects, basically it uses these 2 things, and it detects whether or not there's a mask. So it takes the array. So remember, we turned it to a black and white image, then to an array, and then it runs through the array, and then it's like, oh, is there a mask or no mask? And then once it determines that, it adds a frame. So it goes back to Opencv. The color is orange because it's Opencv. So it goes back to the Opencv, and it's like, hey, can you put a box around the face? Can you just put a box if it's like a mask or not? And so it's like, yeah, let's put the box on there. So basically that's what it does. And then just to explain a mask and no mask database, it just means like, oh, it's just like basically a folder with no mask images, and then a bunch of mask images. That's how you train a model for it to work. But yeah, basically that's what it is. And then so basically, to test this entire function, I use something called Postman. I learned this through Bitcamp as well, and it's basically just a testing application. It's basically just a testing application for Microsoft Azure Function, and I just tested through this thing and it worked. So that's what Postman is. You just are able to test your function, and it was able to work. So now the next thing you gotta do is, now you don't want to output an array with a bunch of squares, because I mean, you don't want like a bunch of random arrays as your results. You want the original picture back. So then there was this particular code. It gives you back, the Microsoft Azure function gives you back the HTTP response, and it's like, hey, let's convert it back from an array to the original image, and then thus it creates the original image with the results of whether there's a mask or not. And then the second block of code that you see, it just puts that image back onto the website. So going back to the chart, I probably said a lot of things, but just to summarize, the first thing you do is you go through the website. The website takes the image to Azure Function. The Azure Function calls these 4 libraries, and then it goes through that entire process of just analyzing the image, and then it returns the image back to the website. That is all summarized in this particular block of code right on the bottom. So now you guys probably like had so much information processed, but now you're probably wondering, okay, Kim, what does it look like now? So this is what the upload button looks like. So when you upload the file, you upload it, and then you detect it. Basically, the upload button and then the submit button, right? And you can upload either an image or a video. And this is my homepage. This is my homepage for my website. Like I said, I use a template, so I definitely don't think I could have done this like all on hand by myself, but it was really nice just being able to use one and modify it to my own. But you can see this is my front page of it. And then this is my demo. So basically, you upload the file, and then it says no mask, 99.98%. And then you upload the image with the file, and then it says 100%. And so this is just an overview of my website as well. And then this is what my project is about, and then and such like that. So yeah, just to go over one more time, you upload the file, you detect it, and then you upload another file, and then it detects it. So yeah. And so these are some of the sample results I got. There's some with no mask, there's some with mask. Yeah, these are just some of the sample images. And I'm going to explain the limits I had, though. You can't just really do it for any image. I'll explain there was definitely some errors and stuff that came with it. And then this is me. This is a video with no mask. So it can detect not live, but you have to upload a video, and then it just says no mask. And then this is a sample result with video with a mask. So yeah, so this is no mask. And throughout the process, I definitely ended with a bunch of challenges. So the first thing was programming languages. I haven't used Python since high school, and I had to relearn it all over again in the span of basically 3 weeks or 4 weeks. And it was kind of difficult to learn a whole new language in 2 weeks. Plus JavaScript, I've never used JavaScript that much. I do a lot of web dev, but I don't use too much JavaScript. But yeah, learning these two programming languages, I had to do that. And then concepts that I had to use was like Keras, Opencv, TensorFlow, Azure, just a bunch of other things I had to learn on top. And then some tools I also had to learn was Azure Functions, obviously, static web app, Google Colab. Google Colab was the main thing I used in order for my Python code to work, the face detector function to work. And then I just used Visual Studios. I don't use Visual Studio that much. I use another editor app more, but it was fun just being able to learn all this. Some resources I used was obviously YouTube. I looked through a million YouTube videos just to learn how a bunch of these things work. I honestly felt that my project was more heavily weighed on research rather than the coding itself. Like research just took much more time than like actually coding it. But once you get to learn it, it's nice. And then I use Stack Overflow because I feel like that's what a lot of people use in order to try to debug your stuff. And speaking of debugging, one of the other things that I learned, so other challenges I faced was obviously debugging. There was a lot of bugs, a lot of errors. Me and my mentor met up almost like all the time. And honestly, I definitely couldn't have done this without my mentor helping me out. But yeah, debugging and then time management. I definitely was one of those people who turned in a lot of things late because I have a really busy schedule as a student, and it was midterm season. And I tried learning to make it better, but it was just nice at least being able to finish the project on time in a product that I was proud of. So future plans that I plan. So originally I wanted to create a program where it would detect the person wearing a mask, not live through a webcam. That was my original idea. But then my mentor told me that a limitation for Microsoft Azure Functions was that it can't detect live or streaming services yet. So I was like, oh, okay, darn. So he was like, you should just make a web app. And I'm like, okay, cool. So I made a web app. But in the future, I do want to be able to make something where it's able to detect it live on a webcam like I am on right now. And it might just not have Azure Functions, but I wanted to at least develop it into a project that can go up to that level. And then other things I had was, oh yeah, so the video part, when you guys go on the website, the video part doesn't actually work because I didn't have enough time. Like I said, I had time management issues, but I didn't have enough time to do that video. So that's why I uploaded video samples that work on my computer. But on the website itself, it can't really do the video part yet because of two reasons. One, I didn't have time, and two, when it can't detect more than one output. So let's say I had a video where I'm wearing a mask and then I take it off. It will output an error because my program can only handle one output right now. It can only go like, oh, like I can only detect if you're wearing a mask or only you can wear just no mask. Like it can't do both because I guess I didn't make it smart enough to do that. So it's like, oh, screw you. Like we can only do one. So that's why the upload video button doesn't work right now. Only the image one does. But yeah, I can do the video one through my local computer, but I just can't do it publicly yet because it's definitely still needs some work and needs some debugging. And the other solution that I want to do in the future is I hope it can detect multiple faces. Right now, it can only detect one face at a time, and I wanted to be able to detect more than one face in the future. 2 realistic images. So what I mean by realistic images is that you can see, if I go back, that all these images are really high quality, and no, you're not gonna take a photo shoot and to do like, oh, let me just see if I wear a mask or not, right? So you need, some people might just take their phone out and just take a selfie and then just do it, right? But the thing is, sometimes it doesn't work because the algorithm is not wired enough to detect small images, or like, I guess, blurry images, or not high quality images, if you know what I mean. So right now it can only detect really high quality images. So I found a bunch of stock images online and did it with that. And then the last thing I want to fix is real time. Like I said, I want to implement it live. So yeah. And then my experience overall, it was awesome. I really loved it. Big project was really fun. I will admit that I felt like I overcommitted myself to a lot of things this semester, but I still had a great time. I'm really glad I did it. I definitely recommend it to anyone who wants to learn it, even if you have no coding experience. I just had a little bit of coding experience, but not that much, even though I'm a computer science major. But anyone can honestly do it as long as you put the effort to it and don't procrastinate like I did. But it was definitely well implemented, really organized, and like I said, I just recommend it to like anyone who just wants to learn this. And so it also expanded my interests. I have a lot of interest in a lot of field. I still don't know what I want to do, even though even though my field tends to be more in space, like because I have a lot of NASA experience, but like I still want to explore other fields like robotics, front end development, still back end development, AI, machine learning, deep learning. But this project definitely just expanded my interests on those and allowed me to explore those because I've always wanted to, but I never really had like, I guess, the motivation to. And so Bit Project allowed me to expand upon these interests. And then these are the skills that I learned. I learned all these different skills, as you can see. You can see the icons: Python, TensorFlow. I don't want to like repeat too much to you guys because I felt like I said a lot already. But yeah, I learned I definitely learned a bunch of skills just through this 8-week boot camp. So I'm really grateful. So I want to say thanks to my mentor Ankit. He's great. I definitely would not have survived this project without him. He's awesome. If he's not here right now, but I know he's going to watch a recording later. So if you hear this, Ankit, thank you so much. Thank you for helping me. And thank you to the serverless instructors, Julia, Emily, and Evelyn, for tolerating with my late work. But I'm glad you were patient enough with me to let me do this project and let me participate in this boot camp, and for helping me and supporting me in like so many other things. Thank you, Chloe, for all your amazing Twitch videos that you posted, along with Shreya and Daniel. You 3 are amazing Twitch streamers. Presenting your concepts really well, really clear. I had an amazing time watching them. And yeah, thank you, everyone.
Kim, you're amazing.
Sorry. I went over time, sorry.
No, you're fine. The chat is blowing up. Everyone's like, can I be Kim when I grow up? That About Me page. Let's talk about that for a second. I want to be Kim. Like, your hobbies, all the stuff that you do, like, it's no wonder. I also am a last minute / I say I'm a procrastinator, but I think I just do a lot of stuff. But we forgive you because you're here changing the world, Kim.
Thank you.
This is such an impressive resume, and you're not even graduated from college yet. So great app, great humanness.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just lost for words. Like, it's so impressive.
Thank you. Yeah, I know the draft when we did it earlier, I was like, yikes. I was like, I swear I'm not this bad. I just need more time. And I was able to do this. But yeah, I'm definitely proud of the product I did. I definitely wish I could have finished a little bit more, but honestly, I'm good with it. So
well,
yeah.
And now we have it out for people to play with, and you can iterate on it more. Did we have any questions in the chat, Emily?
Yeah, we have a lot, actually. So let's talk about your machine learning experience first. So what was your experience with that?
I've never had AI or machine learning ever before this. None.
Crazy.
I've always wanted to, though. There's a lot of clubs at USC. They have like an AI club, a machine learning club, and I went to them, but I never participated in because, like I said, I tend to overcommit a lot. But not really commit to the ones I want to. And it's also because I like to learn a lot of things. So I never had the chance to learn it. So no, I definitely do not have experience in any of that until this project. So it was nice just being able to learn it from scratch, even though it did take a lot of hours just to learn it. But I had a fun time doing it. So no experience at all. But
That's
this shows that if anyone wants to learn it, go ahead and just dive into it. Why not? So
Amazing. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. And you said that you've been streaming as well, Kim?
yeah, I started streaming 2 months ago, like beginning of January when I got a PC. So that was it's
What are
fun.
you
I love
streaming? Are you streaming coding or games?
Mainly games and mainly just chatting. I haven't streamed coding yet, but maybe I would definitely want to in the future. But right now I just stream games. I play games with my friends. I play a lot of Valorant, League, bunch of other games too. So if anyone plays in the chat, feel free to let me know. But
yeah, drop
yeah.
us your username in the chat.
Sure,
I'm
I
sure
can do
everyone
that.
will watch.
Yeah.
Getting a fan club built up here.
Yeah.
I can't believe this was your first experience with AI/ML. That is so
Definitely.
impressive. And I see so much of myself in you, Kim. I have so many different hobbies and interests and things, and it's hard to commit to just one thing because everything is so interesting and fun to do.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing.
Here's a
Ooh,
question
yes.
from Chloe, actually.
How do I become? I feel like I don't know, I feel like I'm not. I mean, I don't want to be like modest, but I'm not too smart. I think it's more just like effort. I feel like in my, I feel like putting a lot of effort and hard work into something makes you smart. You know, it's what makes you like. I feel like anyone can do it, even though I guess some people can be slower or faster in learning. It just depends on the pace. But I thank you for the compliment. It makes me flattered.
Wise
But
words,
yeah,
wise words.
but yeah,
Well,
everyone don't be intimidated. Just do your effort.
do you
and
know
just-
what you want to do like post college? Have you thought about that yet? Like, because I'm seeing a lot of NASA stuff on here, so I'm like,
When I was little, I used to always wanted to work at NASA. I was always NASA this, NASA that. And then during high school, I was like, oh, I'm going to reach out to a random college professor because I lived near the University of Arizona. And I was like, can I do a research project with you? And he was like, sure. And I was like, oh, cool. So, but I don't know, actually. I don't know if I actually do want to work at NASA or GPL. I guess the only reason why I want to intern there is because it's like, oh, since I have experience, they take me in. It's like, I just want to get an internship no matter where it is kind of thing. But I'm not sure.
I think
like
you're
I
going to
said-
be running the next SpaceX. Like, that's what I see. I'm ready for it. I'm ready for Kim X.
Maybe that'd be pretty cool. I'll invite all of you too. You guys will be all
Thank
there
you.
together.
We'll be
But,
funder.
yeah.
We'll fund it. Angel and
Yeah,
Buzz.
I want to talk about the functionality of your project, how useful it
Yes.
actually is, how applicable it is in the world today. So right here, it's not really a question, it's a comment,
Mhm.
but all of those places you could put up
And
Kim's
Chinkies.
app.
Basic how you. Oh yeah, no, yeah. I think that my project. I don't think it's like so new that no one's ever came with it. There's definitely. I'm sure there's other people who came up with the idea. But yeah, I definitely want to implement it to something like that if I ever get the chance to. Like put it up in different gates and then like in front of Walmart and scans it, and then if it
Well,
says
like
yes, we
theme
can let
parks
you
are
in.
opening soon again in California. Disneyland, call Kim. She's got you. So she'll hook you up with this app.
Yeah, Disneyland Kid. Just put all over Disneyland. Yeah, no, I feel like those would definitely be good implementations of the project. Definitely not there yet in terms of knowing how to do that, but that'd be a good idea.
Yeah,
Mhm.
maybe like an alert goes off in Pirates of the Caribbean if someone's like trying to sneak their mask down. It'll be like, stop it.
Stop, exactly, stop. Like, it just says an alert, like stop.
But yeah, we've all seen the pictures from Walmart. I'm sure they would love this.
Yeah. For
Practical application for today's world for sure. I love it, Kim.
sure. Thank you so much.
All right, we have another question. So why not create an instance where it takes 3 to 10 fast pictures and registers them for the analysis?
Oh, that's a good idea too. But I don't know how to do that. I was only able to do it one image at a time. Because I could have done multiple maybe, but I didn't put the effort to know how to do that. But maybe I could. But yeah, no, that'd be a really good idea. Just to put 3 to 10 pictures and just put them all out and then just scan it all. I'm sure there's also probably some other source code for that out there somewhere. I'm not sure where, but that would be a really good idea. I agree, because it's also good for multiple people as well. Because right now, like I said, I can only detect one face at a time. If it detects two, it gives it out an error. It's like, I hate two people. I only want to stick to one. It's like a really clingy program with only one person sticking to one person. So, but yeah.
Kim, I have some alternate Azure solutions for that I'll sync up with you on, because I've seen some really fun ones out there where demos where if you're wearing a certain hat, so I think this demo was for construction workers, if you have a yellow hat on, it'll detect like yellow hat versus like baseball hat or whatever. So I think we'll sync up. We'll figure out how to get this.
Definitely hit me
working.
up with those.
I'm excited to see where you'll take it next, because the website itself is awesome.
Oh yeah, I was really happy with my website. Even though I use a template, it definitely looks totally different though from what it originally looked like.
Well, nobody has to know it was a template.
True.
Graphic design is our passion.
It is.
I mean, like, I actually used a template for my project Funny Image too, and it looked great, but we don't have to tell people.
Exactly, you don't have to tell people. Just like
view it like Stitch Fix, like you can order clothes that like other people style for you. Like that's how I picture templates. I'm just like, look, I'm not a designer. I'm not the best at this, so someone else tell me what to wear. It's just that, but for computers.
But you're the one who's wearing it, so. I mean, what's the difference?
Yeah, exactly. That's why they exist.
Exactly.
We have another suggestion. So having the frame focus in a specific area would also help.
Yeah, that's true. I could have done that as well, having just like a specific area. But the problem is, I think the problem with that though is that if we set it at a specific like area, the thing is each image is different. So maybe some images are more towards the right, towards the left. So I feel like you would have to have maybe like a common place where the image would be, like smack right in the middle. Like you would have to set the requirement for the user, like, oh, user, please make sure your image is within this frame. So that's actually a good idea. Actually, like just having it, like telling the user to put it at a specific frame, and then having like some kind of like application where it's like, oh yes, your image is in the box that it needs to be, and then we can scan it. But yeah, no, that's a good idea too. Soft talk already? Yeah, that's a good idea.
Well, yeah. Chloe, do you have any other last comments? I'm just completely blown away by this.
That we stan. I just followed Kim on Twitch. I'm so excited.
Yeah.
I'm so thrilled to see like what you end up doing with your programming skills. We got the next Satya and Nadella in here, I think.
Thank you. And I'll follow it back too. I think you stream too. I think like your own, not bit project. I mean,
we'll stream together. We'll do some NASA streams together or something.
I'd be so down. Hey. But thank you,
everyone.
Thank
you so much, Kim.
Thanks.
We're gonna transition to some music. So if you guys
listen some jams
music, we got Rashik here, and I'm not gonna say too much either this time. So we're gonna let him take it away.
All right, sweet. Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Oh yes.
All right, let's get started. So my project is a serverless music player, and so let me introduce myself real quick. So my name is Rashik. I'm a senior at Case Western Reserve University. I've been coding since I entered college. So I've got a decent bit of experience. So getting straight into my project. So why I made this project is I really love listening and discovering new music. And one way I do that is I listen to a lot of YouTube, and the instrumental intros and outros to those YouTube videos are something I really enjoy listening to. Just like while I'm studying, while I'm just hanging out with friends, just having like a little background track to whatever I'm doing is just awesome for me. The problem is to find these music, a lot of them are open access. That's why YouTubers use them. So they're not made by artists big enough to be on any specific platform. So you might not see them on Spotify. You might not see them on Apple Music. You'll have to hunt around for the music on like SoundCloud or on smaller websites. So I wanted a better way for listening to this music, having like one integrated location where I can just go pop on like my playlist of music that I want to listen to that day and just listen to it. And I also wanted a better visual interface. Some of the smaller websites that have these artists their interfaces aren't the greatest. So I wanted something a little bit more aesthetically pleasing for that. So progress. So this is like a flowchart for my application. It's really simple. I have a web page that has the music player and will allow you to play, pause the music. It gets its data from an Azure function. That way it's loaded on demand. That way I don't have to have like a server constantly running in order to provide my song data to the music streaming application. And then once I get the data from the web page, I can say, I want to play this song. And then my web page will query the song provider in order to get an audio stream. That way you don't have to store the music either. You can still use all the third-party websites that have the music stored on them. So like you don't have to have like a database running, you don't have to have a server running. It's just very low footprint. It's a very low footprint application. So the web page will get the audio stream from the song provider, and you can listen to it just like you would a normal audio stream in Spotify or Apple Music. So solution, the tools I used were React.js, and I supplemented that with a TypeScript TypeScript template. That way I could have a little bit more type safety in my application. TypeScript is really powerful when it comes to like when something breaks, as you would in like a normal like Java, C#, C++ language. TypeScript will make sure that the JavaScript will behave in the same way. So when you do something that's a little suspect or a little hacky, TypeScript will stop you and say, hey, there's a better way of doing this. You should probably think of doing it that way. And I also used SCSS as a means of styling everything. I really love using SCSS templates. It makes styling your websites and styling your applications so much more intuitive than a normal CSS framework. And obviously I used Azure Functions. The main type of function I used was an HTTP trigger, because what I'm doing is I'm getting data from a static location. That way I can query the song provider to get me the songs. And for this, I use ChillHop to actually host my audio streams. You can use any number of websites. You can use SoundCloud. I tried to use Spotify, but that costs money, and you can only get 30-second audio streams out of that. But theoretically, you could also use Spotify. So let's go straight into my demo. And I'll share. Okay. So this is what my application looks like. There's two real main components. There's the main player itself, and that allows you to play, pause the music. You can skip backwards and forwards. You also have the album art here. There's also the library component where you can choose which song you want to listen to, and then you can listen to however you choose. One thing I really like about this application, and one thing I want to expand on in the future, is how it looks in terms of like the progress bar. Each progress bar is customized based off of the song and the album cover for that song. And that's one thing I really want to expand in the future. I want to get more of these colors in different places in the application. Like for example, the library, like the color will change when you hover over the button. So I'd love to get that into the same color scheme as the rest of the progress bar, as a album art. Same thing when I'm hovering over music in the library. I just want to make it a more consistent visual experience. And just like any other music streaming service, you can start, you can skip music. And yeah, I really like this application. It's something I'll actually be using in my own time. It's not hosted anywhere yet, so you can't use it, but that's something else I plan on implementing. So let's get back to the presentation. So the challenges I faced, the biggest challenge was learning TypeScript alongside React. I've had a little bit of React experience in the past. I'm mainly a backend engineer, so learning front-end technologies is something I've been trying to add slowly. It's not really where my comfort zone is, but that's one of the reasons I'm learning TypeScript. That way I get a more backend style inside of my front-end frameworks. So learning React along with TypeScript is pretty challenging. React isn't fully able to support TypeScript yet in like the full capacity. There's a lot of quirks that you kind of just have to deal with when you're using both TypeScript and React. I'm pretty sure it's something that React will support more as they exist for a little bit longer. But for now, the biggest quirk I found was integrating the data. React doesn't really have a native way without using another NPM package to get data from an API request and then immediately convert it into a type, so that way TypeScript isn't angry, and then also immediately put that into state. That way the rest of the application can use it. So that was a really challenging experience for me. It took a lot of Googling. It took a lot of Stack Overflow, a lot of YouTube tutorials before I was able to really figure out a solution that worked. And even then, I'm not the happiest with it. React definitely works a lot better when it's plain JavaScript, and TypeScript gives it a little bit more annoyance, I think. But finding music was also pretty difficult. Like I said, I wanted to use Spotify initially, but I had issues with the Spotify API. One, you need to pay for it. And secondly, you can only get 30-second audio streams out of it. And that's a little useless when you're trying to actually listen to music whenever you want. Listening to just 30 seconds of a song isn't really enough. So I had to find ChillHop. I was also going to use SoundCloud, but SoundCloud could be a little bit quirky sometimes, especially since the audio streams weren't always loading sometimes. So I stuck with ChillHop for all my music, but there are definitely other websites that you could use as well for this. So future plans, I'd love to add more music and actually add a feature so users can add music themselves. Right now, you actually have to go into the function and put in the actual data into the function. That way it'll send it out via the API call. So I'd love to actually add a feature where you could upload the music directly from the front end, or you could specify a link to a website that has music, and it would automatically just add it to your function. I'd also love to actually implement a playlist feature. Right now, it's it'll send you all the music or it'll send you none of the music, which isn't something you necessarily want. Sometimes you're in the mood for a more chill playlist. Sometimes you're in the mood for something a bit more poppy. So having an actual playlist feature would make this a lot more useful. So you could actually load in the music you want to listen to at a specific time. And it'll also decrease the footprint of the application. I'm sending less data along the API call. And also, like I said, I want to add more colors. I want to make this a much more more cohesive user experience. And I want the experience to be more dynamic based upon which song and album cover you're listening to. Just add a little bit more uniqueness to the application. And finally, just so other people can use it as well, I'd love to host the function in the website. And I'll probably use, I don't know if I can use static web apps for that, since this isn't necessarily a static web application. I don't know if React will play too nicely with that. And I didn't really have time to figure out if it would. So it's something I'll definitely look into. But there's other solutions out there to host React websites. So I'll be looking into that so other people can use this as well. So I had a really great experience with this with building this application. I learned how to use serverless functions, especially using serverless functions with JavaScript. I built serverless functions with C# before, but I'm pretty much a noob when it comes to JavaScript. So using JavaScript to build the serverless functions was pretty cool for me, since I was really just going into a language that I'm not too familiar with and being able to create something with that. And like everyone else said, time management is pretty big. It's around midterm season. Everyone's got school. I've got work as well. So being able to balance all these priorities and things that I'm working on, and being able to actually do the course on a regular basis, and being able to actually build this application and push it out, that took a lot of time management. Also, how to deploy this. The function itself is live. So if someone were to have the URL to the function, you can actually query that from your own music player if you were able to implement a music player on your own. So actually deploying a backend is something I've never done. So this is something I'll actually be using a lot when I'm doing hackathons and my own personal projects. I've never actually been able to host a backend before. So I've just had APIs just living locally on my machine, but no one else can actually use them. So I think it's going to be awesome in the future when I'm at a hackathon. I just feel like, hey, you can also use this application, or you can also query this endpoint. And I'd love to give a quick thanks to my mentor, Anthony. He was really, really great to talk to. Our first few meetings, I hadn't really thought of an idea yet. So it's mainly him just talking to me, like we're talking about tech, talking about how functions work in general. He gave me a pretty in-depth look into how the function actually performs on the back end. Like, right, for most of the project, I was just hitting a function and I expected the data to get back to me. But Anthony told me, oh, here's how this actually works. Here's how the scale controller handles all the different requests coming in, because there's a billion functions that are being executed at any moment. So handling all that at scale is something that I think is really awesome. And a big thank you to Anthony for walking me through that. And finally, I'd love to give a thank you to Bit Project and all the TAs. Everyone was a lot of help when I was trying to finish the application, especially when I was running into time management issues as like things came up and I wasn't able to finish some of the modules on time. Everyone was super understanding. They were able to give me the help I needed to move on. So yeah, thank you.
Well, Rashik, I'm glad you had a good experience with Bit Project, because that's what we've been, striving to provide and stuff. So I just want to talk about your UI first. So a lot of people in the comments have been saying, it's super clean, and it's just really great. Have you considered adding a dark mode in the future?
Yeah, I did. Honestly, I forgot that there wasn't a dark mode, because on my own laptop, I have like the dark reader extension. So it'll just automatically convert everything to dark theme for me. And it was something I was planning on adding, and I just forgot to do it.
And we have a question here asking, have you worked with music like this, like integrating in a website before, or was this your like complete first time?
So I've worked with music. I made like a really weird music player with like C++. And it was so much easier with React and with JavaScript, because there's like an actual audio tag in JavaScript. So you can just stick in the audio source and it'll play the music for you. In C++, you actually have to parse the music data coming in to actually get sounds out of it. So it's actually not as difficult as you'd think. It's literally one tag, stick in the source, and everything will work for you.
It's a beautiful thing to see students go from C to JavaScript. Like, it's like, oh my gosh, all this easy functionality. Yeah. And I also love just like, I love that you were like, I have this issue. I know how I want this to look and how I want this to sound and how I want to use it. And you just built it for yourself. It's the beauty of Bit Project.
Don't have it, do it yourself.
Yeah.
Exactly. All right, we have another question. So do you prefer working the front end, back end, or both? I know you talked a little bit about how you've never really, implemented a full-on back end before.
So I really like working on the back end. That's where the problems are, and that's where you actually get to solve the actual issues. But actually being able to work on the front end is so much more satisfying, because once you solve the problem, you can actually see the end solution.
Yes.
So I actually have started like working on both at the same time, and it's so much more satisfying.
Got a full stack engineer on our hands here.
Yeah.
I agree. There's something about that instant visual like joy that you feel of like getting your div centered or that you've been working on for 20 minutes.
When it looks right,
Yeah.
You got it.
You guys would have loved being on Angel Fire. I already know.
Well, are they all discontinued actually, or?
I think so, but I'll find some visuals to share with y'all. You would have been all about the blinky GIFs that we had, and it was a whole era.
When I was younger, I used to like build websites on Weebly, but it really doesn't sound as fun as Angel Fire.
I like watching YouTube videos where people talk about styling their old MySpace pages.
Yeah, it was a lot like that. Oh, great. And do we have any other questions here, Emily?
I'm looking around. We have mostly about comments about your front end, and I mentioned the comment about dark mode.
I think there's also a very interesting commentary here about APIs because you mentioned that you ended up not going with the Spotify API and going with a different one because of limiting on there. And I think that's really kind of a theme that I've seen in some of the projects is I thought I was going to use this API, but there were limitations, or this API was a little bit difficult to understand, so I went with this one. So this is a shout out and call out to anybody who has tricky API documentation or limits on their APIs. We will use them more if they're easy for us to use. But what was that like? Kind of like figuring out this whole new kind of changing course and changing APIs during the project.
So I've used APIs a bunch before, so it wasn't the most difficult. And ChillHop was a lot easier to use than Spotify, even though they're a much smaller company.
Yeah.
Like Spotify's API docs were not that great.
Yeah. I want to try out ChillHop. I have not played around with that at all. It sounds like a really cool. You said it was a free like licensed music source?
Yeah. So like if you're on a stream and you need some music, ChillHop has a bunch of open access music.
Shout out to ChillHop. I'm gonna have to play around with that.
That's nice. I've only worked with Spotify API before, and yeah, like you said, the documentation.
Documentation's important, y'all. If
Yeah.
people are gonna use your API, you gotta read the documentation.
There's been so many times I've been trying to hit an API, and I'm looking through documentation and I cannot find the API endpoint. I'm like, you're telling me what these endpoints do, but how do I get there?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think there's a future out there for anybody who's looking to make beautiful, clean documentation at tech companies. Like, we need you in this industry.
Definitely. I mean, like the number of times I've been on documentation, I have the endpoint, but I don't know what I'm supposed to pass into it. What's the expected output? How should I work with it? You know, there's so many questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ooh, someone in the chat said, check out Lo-Fi Girl on YouTube. 6 years running of quality chill hop music. Ooh, we've got some chill hop fans in the chat
Nice.
here for you to talk with, Rashik. No
Yeah,
sponsor,
it's
just love
exciting
chill
music.
hop.
Well, Chloe or Rashik, do you have any last comments? I mean, I think it was a great project. Like, and I especially enjoyed the music, like when you played it.
Yes.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
I'm just saying, like, if anyone wants to build front end applications, I definitely recommend working with a framework. It's a lot more fun and less frustrating than working with just pure JavaScript, HTML, CSS.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, CSS at some points it can become frustrating.
Frameworks for all the things, please.
Yeah.
It's just like what we were talking about with Stitch Fix earlier, right? It's like we got to use the templates, we got to use the frameworks. They're there to help us.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Rashik. That was a great presentation. I enjoyed hearing about how you use the framework because I definitely need to work with that a bit more. I only have like a little bit experience in React, but I'd love to get more. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Now we're going to be transitioning to another foodie.
Oh, time to eat.
Yeah, so if you were hungry earlier, get ready for more.
Hello.
Another delicious project to consume.
All right, well, Jason, we're gonna let you take it away.
Okay. So I made a web app called Time to Eat, and I guess I can start out with the introduction about myself. So my name is Jason Wu, and right now I am currently a sophomore at the University of Rhode Island, and I pretty much grew up in Rhode Island, the smallest state in the U.S. Nothing much to do here, and I'm known as the IT guy to all my friends. If they have any computer problems, any tech problems, they come to me. I was the IT guy at my university's financial building. So I actually managed a bunch of databases, all those sensitive information, and I just went around and fixed everything. I kept it going. I kept it running, and I have tons of hobbies too. I love eating, exercising, skincare, playing video games, fashion, streetwear, boba, a bunch of stuff. So like I said, my project was called Time to Eat, and I guess a story to go with it was this past year we've all been in lockdown, and I just I've been eating a lot. I've just, if I see food, I eat it. There's nothing much to do if I'm sitting inside all day, so I just eat. And I've packed a couple of pounds, and I just feel like I'm huge right now. So I wanted to find a solution to solve that. Like, how do I lose all this weight? And um, based on like research and like what my friends have told me, the most important part is diet. So I wanted to make a web application to help me um, do that, to help like people lose weight through diet. And there are many ways to do that, like intermittent fasting, or just fasting in general, just like stop eating for like a certain part of the day. And um, I thought about how what could I do through a web app to solve this problem. And I thought about getting a notification through my phone telling me, hey, you can start eating now or stop eating. Like, let's eat at a certain time of the day. And I wanted to send notifications at certain times of the day to let the users know, like, it's time to start. Like, you can start eating now if you like wanted to skip breakfast, or you can stop eating now after like um, after dinner and not have any like midnight snacks or anything like that. So my project is a web app. So you would go on a website and you put on like put in all your information, and all I need is like your phone number and your name, and it would go through like the functions, the timers, go through an API, and then to your phone. But this is like the boring part. Like, it's just a bunch of words. So I made a more simpler, um, friendlier, and more visually appealing version. So you would go into the website and type in all your data, and it would go into the Azure Functions, and it would just take in all that stuff. And then once that it's stored in there, after I have it right now for my application to go off every day at noon and at 6 p.m. evening. And when that time hits, it'll call the API for Twilio. I use Twilio to send an text notification to all the users, and then it'll just send them saying, "Hey, it's time to start eating," or "It's time to stop." So yeah, here's my code, and this is not all my code, but I guess a funny story is like while I was actually coding and like developing all this, for some reason it just like Azure just deleted everything, so I had to start all over again, and that was crazy. And it was like that was like a couple days ago too, and I was just freaking out. But yeah, I ended up finishing it. And on the left, that's one of the trigger functions that you would call through the website. On the right here, it is all the JSON file, which is a file that can it pretty much contains like you can store all the data that you need, and that's where I call the Twilio API. And on the bottom left, I have the form data, which is only me right now. It's I guess it's more of a personalized web app right now, because for Twilio, you do have to verify your phone number if you don't pay for like a full access account. A demo here, I can actually do a live demo. I'm not sure if, but yeah, I can do a demo right here. You would just put in your name and phone number, and I would get a notification instantly to me. So I guess I can try to do a live demo really quick. Here, Jason. I guess everyone's gonna see my phone number as well, but I don't mind. You guys can call me, text me, and submit. And on my phone, it should come up any second now. Here we go. I got a notification from Twilio saying that I signed up for Time to Eat. And because it's not noon or 6 right now, PST, it does not go off yet. So soon. Back to the presentation. So the challenges I faced through this is creating a website. I didn't want to use a template. I have never created a website before, even from scratch. So I wanted to go through the process of learning that as well. So I learned the documentation and stuff for HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And I made like a small front end website. Doesn't really look the best, doesn't really have like images or anything like that, but I feel like it's a good start to like my front end journey. For the data that people send in through the form on the website, it's actually stored through a thing called blobs in Azure, and it stores it in a blob and then sends it into like a storage account in Azure, and all the information can be stored there securely. And I had to learn all that. I did have some experience in databasing, but it wasn't similar to how Azure uses it. So it was a really interesting learning experience, kind of like navigating and learning Azure and its portals. And Twilio, I've never used Twilio before. And when I signed up, it said I had to verify my phone numbers. And I didn't know how I can add like multiple unverified phone numbers. And the only way to do that was to actually pay for a full access account. And as a college student, I'm poor. I can't do that. But yeah, my future plans right now is to have a full website. So right now, like I said, I have like a really bad front page front end website. Just the title, it tells you like when it sends out notifications and just the form, and that's it. I want to add like a video demo as well in there. Maybe like an about, or post my GitHub for it to be open sourced, stuff like that. And right now it only supports one time zone. It supports Pacific Standard Time. Even though I live in Eastern Standard Time, I wanted to be able to, I guess, more accessible to everyone. And I feel like Pacific Standard, I don't know, Pacific Standard Time is more, I think, more generalized than Eastern when it comes to like, honestly, I don't know. But yeah, but I also need to validate the phone numbers. Maybe I'll potentially add a full access account so everyone can use the Twilio API, so anyone can actually use this web application. But yeah, that's what I have for now. My experience, it was very overwhelming. I've never used Azure before. I wanted to learn HTML, CSS, JavaScript. I never used APIs before either, but it was a really, really fun learning experience. I've actually developed pretty good communications, like a soft skill. I was able to talk with my mentor, and he helped me so much throughout this whole project. And I was able to talk with him and be able to go through code, how to like work together and develop a project together, and just be able to like communicate well in a tech environment. Yeah. And being a part of the Bit Project community was just really great. There's so much resources. Everyone's like so nice, and it just feels really nice to be a part of this community and be able to contribute to it as well. And special thanks to my mentor Ankit and all the Bit Project instructors, Chloe, and the community.
Thank you, Jason. That was a great yeah, I guess I don't know if this one made me hungry. I think it made me rethink my choices. But yeah, that's a great one, especially for during quarantine. Like you said, a lot of people are spending more time at home. And yeah, where I'm gonna look at the comments because we have a bunch. Everyone loved your gifts. That's
Yes,
amazing.
which I'm totally gonna steal because I I can totally relate, Jason. I remember when I did my boot camp, I always refer to it as a fire hose of information. Like I was like, okay, you want me to learn JavaScript and API, Python? Like I have to use all these libraries. What's a cron job? Oh my God, time zones. This is a lot. So that GIF is just me constantly. Relatable content here. But it's so funny because you and I think our last two presenters said something along the lines of, oh, I couldn't do more, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you all do realize that you all made like incredible apps. Like I have unrelenting standards too, but these are really great. So Jason, amazing app.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it really was a short time frame. Like we even gave you guys more time, but it honestly still isn't enough. And in that time, everyone was able to do great things. So it's really good. It's awesome.
Yeah.
And let's talk a little bit about what happened with your code, because I think Julia actually last cohort that happened to her too. It really sucks.
Oh.
So yeah, I
Yeah.
guess I can talk about this like my whole journey. So at first, I wanted to do a different project. I wanted to make like a Chrome extension.
That's right.
And I guess that was a bit too ambitious because of it was a lot more than I expected. That's for sure. And I realized I wasn't able to. I don't think I would have been able to finish the whole thing and get like a working product by the end or by the deadline, and especially because I had so much midterms and I was just super busy with school. So I decided to do time to eat. And when I was developing it, it was one night I was just playing around and it just disappeared. Everything just disappeared. So I'm like, wow, I have to restart.
The audacity of computers.
I know,
mean,
right?
Yeah, well, I feel like you're gonna get your jacket and your patch in the mail. Like as engineers, I feel like we've all had one of those moments where we're just like, I'm sorry, what? Where did I but this is still, given the amount of time you did this is an incredible app. I'm like looking at this thinking, okay, you use the Twilio API, you used Azure Functions, you learned a lot of this stuff for the first time. I'm like, we've got a lot of comments in here.
Yeah, a few about learning Azure, because you did mention that it was your first time. What did you think of it? For like those who also want to learn it.
Azure is definitely like a steep learning curve. So it might be overwhelming at first, but once you get to know like everything in it, like the portal, where everything is and how everything connects to each other, it's kind of like how the function connects to like containers and just like storage and stuff like that, then I guess it gets much easier and you get used to it.
There's this visual of that I saw for the first time, I believe last year at Ignite, which is Microsoft's big conference that they used to do. And it was all of the different pieces of Azure. And it gave me a visual for just how gigantic and how like everything from, like you mentioned, blob storage to like, oh, there's a DevOps part of it and there's hosting and it can be very, very overwhelming. And we really only got to the tip of the iceberg with Azure Functions in this cohort. But now that y'all have started on chiseling a little corner of it, I'm so excited to see y'all using more. It'll be really fun.
Yeah, I actually used blob storage for my project. It was pretty interesting to work with. It took a lot of Googling, but it's pretty useful.
I just like the name blob. Like I just like to say blob storage, and I always picture Flubber from Disney's Flubber.
And the first time I like saw it, I was like, what is a blob? Like an event trigger was a blob is stored.
Once you think about it for a while, you're like, okay, blob storage, sure. But like I legitimately was picturing pizza dough for a really long time.
Brings us back to food. But yeah.
Oh, and I should also mention, Jason, you mentioned time zones. And let me tell you, as someone who has had to deal with time zones, this is just like our conversation with APIs where you have to take a little break and come back. Adrian, and we've mentioned this a couple times, I think on the Monday stream we were doing, Adrian from Courier and I built this Azure Functions turnip timer app that would notify us on Sundays when to buy our turnips. And we thought we were very similar mindset, thinking like this will be easy. Then we realized, 5 a.m. on Sunday, which is when we want to notify people, is very, very different for people in Australia than it is for even like an East Coast, West Coast situation, because Sunday is Saturday for other folks, or even a little bit later. So no shame in the time zone game. It can be a lot to wrap your head around, and I applaud you for even just getting time zones to work, because it can be quite a task. Oh yeah, this comment, date time is some of the hardest in any language. So many exceptions. Was the date time in your app storing in UTC? Yeah.
Oh yeah, so it was in UTC, and I think to play around with that, I had to use cron, I believe, and I just had to use like a cron statement and just manipulate the time zone and the when I wanted the my function to run.
Yeah.
Nice. I've never had to work with daytime before, so
Ooh, just
when
wait
I
till
come
you work
across
with
that,
UTC. UTC is, you don't know how many times I have tried to run or test something, and I'm like, this should be working. Why isn't this working? It's always the time zone. So I look forward to the text messages I get from you, Emily, that are like, help UTC.
yeah. Well, thank you so much, Jason. We learned a lot, especially about date time and how things just happen for no reason, like losing your code. That kind of sucks.
Mhm.
But yeah, thank you so much. And now we're
Thank
going to
you.
move on to our very last presentation, unfortunately. And we have Tessa. And she's,
Elsa!
yeah, this is a completely new project. It doesn't really fit into any of the categories of those that we've seen before. So excited to hear about
Look
it.
at this little alien. I'm so excited.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Take it away, Tessa.
Okay. So hello, everyone. Thank you for sticking around to the end of this stream. And if you're just joining us, hello. My name is Tessa, and today I'm going to be talking about my project Workspace. So if you didn't catch it earlier, my name is Tessa, and I'm going to start off this presentation just by talking a little bit more about me. So currently, I'm a sophomore studying computer science at the University of Utah, but I'm originally from Honolulu, Hawaii. Outside of coding and school, I enjoy running, hiking, hanging out with my friends, and of course, sleeping in. I am currently a officer for the Women in Computing Club at my school, and I'm also interested in learning more about web development, data science, and project management. So the web app that I made during this BitCamp is called Workspace, and basically Workspace is a space-themed Pomodoro timer that helps guide kids through breaks and work time, just so that they can develop better time management skills and stay engaged while learning online. Parents also have the option to fill out a contact form, and I use that information to send them a report of their child's activity and like what they've been doing and how long they've been working, like their breaks, things like that, so that they can get a better idea of how their child is progressing and learning. And I do this I send this report using the Twilio API and an Azure function. So again, that iconic combination. So getting into more of like why I built this app, as a college student, I know that online learning can be a real struggle at times, and it's difficult even for me, a student who's been through school for a really long time, to stay focused and motivated. I used to tutor like young students last semesters during the pandemic, and I know that keeping a kid on their computer screen for that long, especially doing school, can be really difficult. And then if you think about kids who haven't even been going to school for very long, and like that whole idea is new, it's even harder. So I built Workspace kind of to tackle that issue. So now getting more into how the web app itself works, I have this diagram that shows a very simple structure of how the web app works. So in the front end, I have like the timer, and that runs, and like the front end also like collects data from the user. And when buttons are pressed on the front end, that's what triggers the Azure function through like an HTTP request that I send. And then in the back end, the Azure function uses the Twilio API to send a text notification to the user. And then this is basically the main piece of code that connects the front end to the back end. So I have this async function send summary that fetches a response from my Azure function. And in the body of the request, I have like phone number and message content. So basically the parameters and arguments that you would need to send a message. And it waits for the response from the back end. And in the back end, it uses the Twilio like library, which I don't show here, but I have that installed. And it creates a message and then sends that to the user and sends back the response. So now for just like a quick live demo of Workspace. So this is the space-themed UI, and I tried to keep it simple since it was more for young kids. So if I click start, the timer just runs, and I set it to 20 seconds just so this demo moves a little bit faster. Basically, when the timer ends, it'll alert the user also here that it's like time to take a break or time to get back to work, basically. So this is the work timer. So alert will pop up in a few seconds, so we'll just wait for that. Yep, so it just says time to take a break, and then it automatically resets. You can click start again, and this runs the break timer. You get another alert here. Okay, and time to get back to work. That's good. And then it just switches back and forth. And then if you scroll a little bit down, this is like the contact form, basically, where the parent can put in like their child's name and then a phone number where you want the report to get to. And then when you click submit, it'll just send a confirmation message. And then when the child is done after using the timer a few times, you can click end session and that'll send the summary. But I don't think it'll work right now just because I think my free trial of Twilio is over. So if I decide to go back and pay, then it'll work. Yeah. So some of the challenges that I faced while working on this project was just figuring out where to get started and then also testing. So working on this project, I felt was very different from like any assignment I would get in school, just because I spent a lot more time like searching through Stack Overflow and like reading documentation than I did like actually coding, because this project was more about figuring out what to do, I felt, than being like told what to do. And at times I felt like I didn't know enough to get started because I didn't have like this plan in my head of exactly how things are going to look. But what I had to realize was that the best thing to do is get started. And by doing that, I also realized that I like knew more than I thought I did. And once I like found the information that I needed, it was pretty like smooth sailing from there. And then with testing, I was just having some difficulties because I was using a school laptop. So I didn't have like all the authorization to just like go download things by myself, basically. So that kind of made testing harder because I couldn't have all of the software that I needed to like make that process more like cohesive and smooth. But I basically got around this just by like pushing to GitHub often and then doing like my testing live. So my future plans for Workspace would be to make the front end more interactive. I had like a few more ideas of how to make the UI like a little bit more engaging. So the timer is supposed to represent like the planet Saturn, and the ring around it, I wanted to make a progress ring so that it could be like building up Saturn's rings, basically. And I just thought that would make it more engaging, especially for young kids. You need things like that to keep their attention. So that was one thing that I would want to implement. And also, I think I would want to incorporate a database, just because, as I said earlier, I was like interested in learning about data science and like working with data. So I feel like that would be a fun thing to add to it. And if I were to have like an account for users, basically, I think I could get more meaningful data by tracking like students' working habits for a longer period of time. So I think that would be really helpful. And then if I were to summarize what I learned, it would be basically how to build a web app that other people can actually use, which I thought was really cool because if you think about school assignments again, basically the only people looking at your code are you and then whoever's grading. So I thought that it was really cool that I could build something and then I could like have like my younger cousins or something use it. I also feel like I have the skills now to build a web app and like continue developing things, like whether it's this project or I want to start other projects. I didn't know much about JavaScript or HTML, and I was completely new to Azure Functions. So I learned so much about that. And then also how to connect a front end and the back end. I also had never made a back end before, and I didn't know how to connect those two. And I think that was like the most like elusive idea to me before I started working on my project. So that is also like a great skill to have for anything pretty much related to computer science. And then I also learned how to read documentation, like I said earlier, and like finding information online that would be helpful for my project. Yeah. And then I would just like to thank my mentor, Marie. She was a huge help throughout the entire process and just like helping me come up with ideas or solve any problems that I encountered. And also thank you to Emily, Evelyn, and Julia for leading our cohort. And thank you to Chloe, I would also like to add, for doing those amazing lectures for us.
Oh my goodness, I'm in love with this alien. I'm in love
Me
with this
too.
alien.
I love this space
Have you
game.
named this alien? Is there a name?
I haven't yet. So actually in my like first iteration of it, I kind of wanted the timer to be Mars. So I was gonna name it like some name related to that, but I haven't come up with a name since I like switched the ideas
Chloe, do
around.
you have any ideas for the name?
Ooh, put me on the spot here. Let me marinate on it. I feel like this alien is so cute. It's giving me some Mike Wazowski vibes, kind of. Or maybe like Space Wazowski. I don't know. I'm going to workshop it.
Got it. We have some questions, especially about like the idea of your project. So how did you get to this idea specifically? What was your thought process? What made you land on this productivity timer for kids?
Okay. So basically when I was thinking of an idea, I had to just like come up with a problem that I wanted to solve first. I think that was the thing. I had a lot of ideas at the beginning, and I spent like the first 2 weeks just like trying to figure out which one I wanted to like do basically. So because I mentioned earlier, like I tutored younger students like during the pandemic, I felt like it was something that like I understood well and like was closer to home. So that's why I decided to pick it.
Yeah, and such a practical thing that can be used right now, because many students at home right now, especially younger ones during the panini, could benefit from this.
I'm glad that you like pulled from your own experience. You know, you found a problem that you knew personally and you applied it and you made a project out of it. So I think that's what's really cool about it. And yeah, so you mentioned that you didn't really have a lot of front-end development experience, right?
That blew my mind when you were like, it was my first time doing backend, and I learned Azure Functions. It was my first time connecting backend to front end. I was like, ma'am,
Well,
that's a lot.
Yeah, it definitely. I feel like I was really excited to learn it though, because I like, again, like as I said in my presentation, like making apps that like other people can use. That was like the motivating idea behind like the entire project. Just I think it's so cool, like eventually like building up, and like if you think about like social network kind of things where there's a bunch of people using it, I feel like that's so cool and that's like what makes technology so cool, because people all over the world can like use it.
Yeah,
definitely. You just surf to a website and you got it. You don't have to, like, it's not like paper where you have to, you know, remember back when we have to put flyers up in order to spread information.
Yeah.
All we need now is to get you some Twilio credits and you're gold. Like, we're gonna ship this out to everyone.
Yeah, Twilio credits. Oh, why is Twilio so expensive, right?
Yeah.
We're gonna get the Twilio hookup. I feel like a lot of students in Bit Project would make amazing Twilio champions for the Twilio Champions program. So I think we have some future applicants in here. I'll have to hit up my friends over at Twilio.
Yeah, definitely how younger kids, especially, online school is terrible for them.
Yeah. Yeah, shout out to any kids out there learning during the Panera. School is already really hard, and to do it remotely at home, we're sending you all the love. And to the parents, oh my goodness. Because this is also a great app for parents.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. So that was like another aspect of it too, just because like parents don't really know what kids are doing if they're just on their computer the whole time. I feel like it'd be kind of nice, like if I was younger, if I had this, because then my mom could just like get off my back a little bit.
Mom,
and
I'm
like
fine. So
take a-
really you built this for younger you is what you're
yes.
saying.
That's cute. Well, I really enjoyed hearing like the backstory to this project too.
Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's always nice when you connect it to something in your personal life that you've experienced before.
I can't wait for Tessa to be our newest technical pioneer in education tech. Like, I think we stand to make so much more technical advancement. Like, do you ever see those videos that are like, this is the future of classrooms? And it's like a 3D globe, and like, that's what I see Tessa helping bring into the world.
Are
for
you
us.
interested in like the intersection of technology and education?
I think so. I feel like I like working with kids, so I would definitely be down to like learn more about that and like keep pursuing this kind of. I remember like I also watched like presentations before, like people giving talks about how like a lot of the like innovation in like the tech space is gonna come from like first making products for kids because they're like more open to like trying new things and like using different products basically.
The example I love to give is there was this movie called Xenon, Girl of the 21st Century, that they played on Disney Channel all the time. Raven Simone was in it. And they would always communicate. So keep in mind, this was like the 90s, early 2000s, through these video screens. And I'd be like, oh my gosh, that'd be so cool if I could get ready in the morning, pick out my outfit, do my makeup, and video chat with my friends. Now I do this all day for my job. So be careful what you wish for. But it's so true. Like all of the things in sci-fi technology, and we got to make these things. These kids got to start making them so we can get them in the real world. So thanks for helping innovate there.
Mhm.
Thank you.
We've
for
got a
having me.
Xenon fan in the chat. Very exciting.
Well, thank you so much, Tessa. That was an insightful project, and it definitely brought up some issues that are very important right now during these unprecedented times. But yeah,
Well,
we're gonna start closing up the stream. So thank you so much for everyone who's presented so far. I'm gonna bring not everyone in, but Julia and Evelyn back in.
the gang's all back.
Yeah. So to close everything up, thank you guys so much for sticking around. I know, it's a lot of information, but I hope you guys learned a lot. So now, since Chloe was actually just talking about the future of learning, and
Whoa.
we are getting there. So guess what? Bid Project is launching something called camp.dev soon in June, and you are invited to become a part of it. We have this whole new website. We have a whole new platform for learning. So no more GitHub Learning Labs. Yeah. So, and like Chloe's on the front page. It's pretty cool. Yeah. She's famous. She's already famous. So yeah. So yeah,
So exciting.
Join us. Apply here. Someone wants to send here, I'll send in the chat. But join us please in June, and you can build a project like these 6 amazing students did. There's gonna be serverless, and we are going to be releasing the other camps that we will also be offering. And this is a great time because it's away from midterms. I know a lot of students had trouble meeting deadlines because tests, midterms, stress. So this is June. This is during the summer. You guys will have more time, and everyone from all walks of life are invited. You don't have to be a college student. You don't have to be a university student. If you want to learn new skills, just come on.
So exciting. And you get to work with other students, you get to collaborate, you get to learn the soft skills, work with different mentors like Anthony and myself. So anybody looking for some experience, I think especially even maybe folks who are job searching right now and looking to build a project from start to finish with accountability and help from these lovely humans up here, I highly recommend this program, y'all. So apply, do it. Learn
Yeah,
all
and
about the things.
it's fun to build the project, and it's resume worthy, so looks good. Like you did it. All right, well, thank you guys so much for joining. That's about it for today. And don't forget, if you want to join, head to apply.bitproject.org, and we'll see you next cohort or any other stream.
Yay! Bye, y'all. And
Bye,
congrats
everyone.
to all the students. Amazing project.
Yes,
Great
congratulations.
work.
Mhm.